Welcome back to Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me is Omar Pozos, my co-host and husband. How you doing today, Omar?
I'm cold. It's 44 degrees here in Florida.
I don't know how we're going to
get
survive.
these kind of this kind of weather. Funny, I was just on the phone with somebody yesterday, or via Zoom.
Yeah, maintenance cow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cold. It's in the 40s. And she's like, well, I'm in Minnesota and it's minus 10. And I was like, okay, I'll shut up for now.
I would actually die.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling really good. I was just talking about on my Instagram stories of I feel like I've put on a good bit of strength and muscle lately, and that feels really good. It's exciting to be in a place where I can finally push myself a little bit more in the gym. And I should specify, when I say push myself, I'm still only strength training 2 to 3 days a week, but I'm actually, lifting just heavier weights, just really kind of working on that progressive overload, especially around my cycle where it, matches up to really push myself. And I've been finally putting on some good strength and muscle, and it feels really dang good.
Yeah, I bet. And the other cool thing is, if you guys follow along, Vanessa and I just got back from Park City. We were out skiing with some friends for a couple of days. No falls, no broken bones. Well, there were some falls, just no serious injuries. So yeah, I bet you're feeling pretty good then, huh?
Yeah, I'm also, I also just shared this on Instagram, but I'm playing a game with myself right now.
What's the game? I don't even know about this game.
Where I'm just seeing how long I can go without washing my hair. And just, right now we're winning the game because it's been a long amount of days.
What's a long amount of days? Like, what's a normal, and where are you at now?
I'm somewhere around probably 9 or 10 days right now.
Oh, that's kind of gross.
Well, I haven't been sweating. I literally have done, and that's like an example of, I say I push myself in the gym. I'm not breaking a sweat even. I haven't used the sauna. But you know what? The curly haired girls know it's a whole thing to have to wash your hair, and especially if something like this where I'm like, I need to look somewhat presentable because we're on camera. I can't just let my hair be wet and air dry and just go into crazy Tarzan hair. So I was like, you know what? We're just going to go another day and we're just going to slick back into that ponytail and we're just going to keep on rocking it.
Hey, whatever makes you happy, babe.
Well, today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is functional lab testing. And, I share about this quite a bit on social media because I really think that more people need to be aware of their options when it comes to lab testing. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is every time I have a video, like a reel or a post that's getting a lot of traction and it's talking about labs, inevitably, I'm always going to have somebody come in and say, I'm a doctor and I don't think those tests have validity, or somebody will come in and say, oh, I'm interested in these tests, but I asked my doctor about it and they said, no, you don't need that.
Yeah. Another one that I've seen, and tell me if you've seen it too, but people will be like, well, if they're so good, how come my doctor doesn't provide them for me?
Exactly. Yeah. There's always going to be one of those comments here and there. And so that's why I wanted to devote a full episode on this. Why does your doctor, not believe, quote unquote, in testing like the Dutch test and the GI map? What really is the argument here? Because I am one of those people who I believe that there's a side to every story. And I believe that if you're going to be arguing for something, you need to understand the argument against something, right? And really what I think it simply comes down to, if a doctor, a medical professional, or just really anybody is saying that they don't believe in these functional lab tests, what it really means, what it really comes down to, is that they don't understand them. They don't know how to actually use them properly. Because think of how many things in the medical world, in our history, was at one point or another considered, stupid or considered, just didn't have validity, wasn't believed in. You can even go back to think of I can't remember what year it was, but I know there was research done on how hand washing got implemented into the medical world,
into
and how
nursing,
for a long time they believed it to be just ridiculous. You don't need to wash your hands. And it was ultimately at this one hospital, if I'm remembering correctly, it was this one hospital where this one doctor was like, we're seeing a lot of deaths in women who are having children. And he's starting to notice that he thinks it might be related to the fact that doctors would go and do surgeries and, even even be working on dead bodies, and then they would turn around and go and deliver a baby without washing their hands in between. And so then these women were dying, babies were dying, and he ultimately was able to induce that, you know what, it probably has to do with the fact that we should be washing our hands. And the other doctors ridiculed him and were like, that is ridiculous. We don't need to be doing that.
Yeah. They're like, you need to wash your hair? How crazy is that? Just coming full circle.
But eventually, obviously they got to a point where that ended up completely revolutionizing the health industry. And I think there's a lot of things when it comes to functional health that a lot of people still will look at and be like, "Ooh, that's woo woo." And don't get me wrong, there's stuff that I will look at and be like, "That's a little bit woo woo. That's a little too far for me." But I don't say that because I recognize it might be that I just don't understand it yet. But that being said, I know there's a lot of people who still will look at these incredible revolutionary tests like the Dutch test and the GI map. And because they are newer, because they are labeled functional health, because they are not integrated into our kind of traditional Western medical system, a lot of these health professionals will still kind of turn their nose up at them, which is honestly hilarious because these tests were actually created by doctors who actually wanted to move things forward in a different way. But because it is different, a lot of people think, nope, we don't need that.
Yeah. And I mean, speak from your own experience, babe, but like how much of a difference have these, tests done or made in your life?
Oh my gosh, they completely changed my life. If I had not done functional lab testing, if I had not gone to the root issues of what I was dealing with by using a Dutch test and GI map and other labs like those, I would still be in the same spot of just feeling awful, not being able to lose weight, probably just continuing to gain more and more and more weight, and honestly just feeling lost, definitely feeling depressed, and truly feeling stuck. And I also know this because I know there's a lot of women who come to us who have been in that place for many years. And there really is no worse feeling than knowing that something is wrong with you and yet having a doctor, having a medical professional tell you that there's nothing wrong, that, your labs came back and everything's normal. Congratulations, you're good. And yet you know that you are not healthy. You know that there's something wrong. You know that you should not be feeling this way, but yet you're getting told that there's nothing wrong. Yeah. That is a horrible feeling, and it's just crushing disappointment when you're in that place.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday that we were able to help, and very similar experience. She had a lot of GI issues. The doctor went and was like, "Hey, yeah, so you have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and it is what it is, and you're just gonna have to learn to deal with it." And she's like, "You're telling me like this is what I have to deal with for the rest of my life, and bloating, constipation, like diarrhea, all of these things?" And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Unfortunately, you're just one of the unlucky ones." And you're like, here you go, have at it kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, there's so much more that we can do. Because, as we started chatting, I'm like, did he even ask about, your nutrition? Did he even ask about like your dieting history, your, relationship with like all of these different things that we go into? She was like, no, they never even asked anything. It was just, yep, you're unfortunately, you're one of the unlucky ones. Here's a probiotic. Here's a, another medication.
Probably like an antacid or something. Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's why, gosh, like we order a lot of labs within our company. We, use a lot of lab testing with the women that we work with. And it is just like super, super common that I will get messages from clients after, whether it was their coach that reviewed their labs with them, or, if I was kind of reviewing their labs with them, I will get so many responses saying like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so seen," or saying like, "Oh my gosh, I am so relieved to know that there's something wrong with me," which it's kind of funny actually when you're at that point where you are so desperate that you are happy to find out there's actually something wrong with you.
Yeah,
because
like I'm not crazy.
Yeah, that's the thing. It shows you, it gives you true evidence and proof that you are not crazy, you are not lazy, you are not just at this point where you are, wrong for thinking that something's wrong with you. Honestly, it is absolutely life-changing for a client to get the results back and be able to have the raw data to show that they are not crazy, They are not just like lazy and that's why they can't lose weight or that's why they're tired all the time. There's actually a biological explanation for why they feel this way, why they're struggling with their body, why they're, moody all the time, why they just, their energy sucks, why they are just not thinking clearly. Like all these things are symptoms of something going on deeper. And until we figure out what is causing those symptoms, you're going to continue to struggle with those things. And the reality is that blood work, which is, what doctors do when they do labs, and blood work, of course, has a time and a place. We utilize blood work as well, but blood work is only a snapshot. Is it just purely a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on in the body, what is kind of free and available in the blood at that point in time? It's not giving the full picture view. Functional labs like the Dutch test and the GI map, they really do give you the gift of answers, but only if you actually know where to look and how to tie the different pieces of information together. The Dutch test, the GI map, they essentially just help you establish patterns of what's going on in your body. They help you because not only, like I was saying, the blood work, that's going to be that kind of snapshot point of view, which is helpful, but we need to dive deeper oftentimes, especially if your blood work is coming back as normal. We definitely need to dive deeper if you are still experiencing symptoms or you just feel like you're not feeling your best. You have a right to dig deeper, even if you just feel like you are not at your absolute peak optimal. You don't have to feel terrible to need these tests either. And the reality is, if we can, now take the symptoms that you're experiencing, we can consider your health history to know where you have been, where your body has been, what your body has been through. And we can now take this detailed look of what's going on in your body via, the Dutch test, the GI map, and really see what's truly been going through your body. We can see all the metabolites of things because we're seeing how it actually went through the body. Since these are urine and stool tests, we can kind of see the whole process of how it traveled through you. We can trace back and see, where the root issues may be. Sometimes it's super clear and obvious based on just like specifically what the data says. Oftentimes it's even, if you really know how to look at these tests and interpret them for what they are, you can really uncover incredible things with these tests. Like I know I was just kind of showing you, Omar, too, of a couple of like examples of this with clients. I mean, we always get so excited when we have like the most incredible team, the most incredible staff.
We really do, and I want to brag, but I mean, they're really a wealth of knowledge. It's just so crazy. But
like you guys think that I'm smart with this stuff, you don't even know.
You guys think Omar is smart? I'm kidding.
But the reality is, like, so I wanted to share it with you guys too, because I was just sharing with Omar of like literally 2 different examples just from yesterday. Like this is how much of just like groundbreaking stuff that we do with labs on a day-to-day basis. These are just 2 examples just from yesterday. And one of them was a GI map example. And that was where, essentially this client's GI map showed a lot of different things going on, showed a weak gut lining, showed a lot of dysbiosis in the gut. But where our team is incredible is that our team, and we put a lot of our heads together, so it's not just any one person being like, oh, this is what I see, let's just roll with that. We're getting different points of view to get different insights. A couple of our team members gave a couple of different insights around the fact that on this GI map, it wasn't showing that this client has parasites, but based on several different factors, they were able to essentially deduce that, yes, she likely has parasites, and that is probably a big part of what's going on. And for that reason, we need to do a specific kind of parasite cleanse to help her body be able to get to the point of not just losing the weight, but also feeling so much better, not struggling with these, just gut symptoms that she's been dealing with for so long. Yeah.
So think of it, I mean, from the example that I shared earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ness, but like, instead of you continuing to just get, oh yeah, irritable bowel syndrome, or yeah, you're just bloated, or it's like, okay, cool. So let's dig underneath the surface, figure out, what sort of bacteria overgrowth, or I don't know, what's going on internally. And I mean, to your point, to the example here, when, both like Elizabeth and Ray and all the coaches were kind of working together on all these things. Now, all of a sudden you're like, actually, maybe the problem is parasites, or maybe the problem is this. And now, again, work your way backwards onto ultimately fixing these things, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, in this example specifically, so like this client, like I was saying, so on a GI map, for those who are not familiar, it does test for parasites. And so it can show if parasites are detected in that stool sample. But now the thing that you have to understand, and this is where, someone who's really good with functional health and really good at interpreting these labs and, taking symptoms and all the different things and putting it all together to understand what's happening is so exceptional, because probably a basic kind of provider who maybe does offer a GI map. And there are doctors who do offer GI maps. That one's become more mainstream and popular. Like there is some.
The GI map has?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that one's actually not as much as the Dutch test, I think, is still more like traditional doctors, I feel like, are pretty skeptical of it for whatever reason. But the GI map, I think maybe it's just been around a little bit longer. And that one is like some people can get it through their doctors.
Oh, cool.
However, every time a client brings me, like when a client starts working with us and they already have a GI map done from their doctor, they'll typically bring it and be like, yeah, like, well, I have this GI map, I have these results, but like, they didn't really explain anything to me. All they said was like, this is a little off, take this probiotic, and that's it. And we'll take a look and be like, actually, this, all these different things going on. So for this example specifically, like I said, we can see, okay, on the labs, are parasites detected? With this one, no. So how did we get to the point of saying, well, I think she does have parasites? Well, that's where you have to understand the different workings of the body. And so both some points that two of our coaches had made. One expressed how, when it comes to a GI map, parasites, because these are living organisms in the body, they'll typically hide in the biofilm of the gut. And so if they're living and well, they're not actually going to pass through and make it into that stool test. So unless the GI map was actually done over a full moon, which is when parasites are most awake because of the cyclical changes in our hormones. We've talked about this on the parasite cleanse episode. I think that was episode 123. So with that episode, we talked about why, the full moon and how like that sounds so woo-woo, but there's actually a scientific understanding to why that happens. But essentially, if the GI map was not done over a full moon, then those parasites might have just been kind of like sneaking away, sleeping, and they just did not get detected. The other factor is, like what one of our other coaches kind of indicated is, there's a couple of markers that are essentially indicators that there might be parasites going on. And this client specifically had those markers pretty high. And so they were able to say, okay, considering her symptoms, considering the fact that these markers are high, so unless it was done over the full moon, where we might not detect that the parasites, like it might not show up in the GI map, it might not have been in that exact stool sample. And also, if the parasites are alive and well, then they might not actually be dying off to make it into the stool. They might just be flourishing in the body. And another way we can detect that is by the way the certain types of bacteria were balanced in her body. There was an imbalance in certain types of bacteria that can again indicate parasites are alive and well because they are actually feeding on that type of bacteria. So it's like there's all these little tiny micro details that we can pick up on, but you have to know where to look and how to use it. And that's just the problem with a lot of these kind of more traditional doctors, like your PCP, or even if you go to more of like a gut specialist, they still might not be trained in how to specifically read a GI map. So they're just looking at it for what it is. They look at the line that says, are parasites detected? It says no. They move on and say you don't have parasites. They're not considering your symptoms. They're not considering your health history. They're not considering the entire kind of putting the different pieces of the puzzle to figure out what you specifically need. Even like with the Dutch test, that was the other example that I was talking to you about. Like that's an example of how, again, with some of the different factors going on, we can start to see, there's actually some indications here that maybe there's some PCOS going on. Like in this kind of client example, got her Dutch test results back, and immediately one of our coaches was like, has she ever been tested for PCOS? And so we kind of talked to the client, and we had kind of shared, okay, here's some symptoms of PCOS. Typically that can look like irregular or missed periods. It can look like hair loss. It can look like unwanted hair growth. It can look like, some blood sugar issues. And obviously it can look like ovarian cysts. However, the biggest, and we could do a whole episode around this, but one of the biggest problems with PCOS is doctors, for whatever reason, will still just kind of stand by the fact that they think you have to have ovarian cysts in order to get a PCOS diagnosis. And that has since been debunked. That is not true. That is not accurate. And so when a client like this is coming to us and she's already expressing these mood issues, she has a lot of mood swings, a lot of anxiety, she it's just, overall, obviously not feeling good. There's reasons she came to us. And then we look at her labs, we see where her androgens are at, which is, a big part of PCOS. And so then we come back and we're asking these additional questions of like, how are these things? And the craziest thing, this client comes back and she's like, oh my gosh, yes. She's like, I have been tested for PCOS. I even saw a specialist about it because of the symptoms I was experiencing, but they didn't detect any cysts when they did the ultrasound. And so they told me, everything's good. You're normal. Keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. And she was like, but when you give me that whole list of kind of symptoms, she's like, I check off every single one except for the ovarian cyst. Irregular periods, yes. Unwanted hair growth, yep. I've been, getting electrolysis for over a year now to, work on this unwanted hair growth across my face and my body. Hair loss. She's like, I have lost 70% of my hair since before coming to you guys. She's like, I had to cut my hair because it was getting so bad. Blood sugar. She was like, oh, well, they tested my blood sugar years ago, but that was another thing where they tested it years ago. They said, looks good. And they haven't tested it again since, which we've talked about on the blood sugar episodes. That right there is ridiculous because blood sugar is something that if you actually need to be looking at it, you need to be testing it across multiple days, across the whole day. We need to be getting our fasted. We need to be getting our 2 hours postprandial. We need to be getting a lot of data and looking at averages. One piece of data, getting your blood sugar checked in one blood draw, that is not going to be telling you what's actually going on. And she expressed of, since they tested me and since they said, I'm good there, I've still continued to feel, really exhausted, really lethargic, weird hunger signals. She's like, I always suspected that maybe my blood sugars were at fault there too. And so this is just an example of, she was like, gosh, I'm looking at her message specifically here from the client. And she was like, the doctor is really dismissing me, dismissing my hair loss, dismissing my weight gain, dismissing my unwanted hair growth, my blood sugar issues, telling me, that everything is normal. That is why I eventually looked into a functional health approach. And that is just one tiny example. Again, these are just literally the two top of mind examples from the day before us recording this episode, because this is what we do day in and day out with these functional health tests. This is what these tests can allow you to do if you know how to use them, how to read them, how to interpret the results along with the other data we have. And this is how we get to that point of uncovering the root causes, the hidden reasons behind the way that you feel, behind why you feel the way that you feel, why you're experiencing the symptoms you experience, and how to actually fix it. Because we're not just putting Band-Aids on symptoms, we're actually getting to the root cause and fixing it so that we don't continue to have those symptoms come up.
Boom. Mic drop.
I feel like I need to catch my breath on that one because I'm just going on a tangent here that you guys did not ask for. But I felt like this needed to be discussed because I know it's going to come up. It will always continue to come up until this becomes more mainstream. And mark my words, this is, January 2025. Let's see how many years before these things become super mainstream and everybody is doing them. And everybody's like, oh, have you done your Dutch test? Have you done your GI map? Because it's just going to be the normal thing.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest comparison or the biggest comparison that I have is, literally think of this as a car mechanic, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know anything about cars. I mean, I know a little bit, but something breaks and they're like, here's the computer, go look at the codes in the car and figure it out. I'm like, well, this is the code and I'm sure I can go online and it can be multiple different things. What I don't have though is the expertise. What I don't have is the experience. What I don't have is the trainings. And most importantly, I don't know how to do this stuff. So that's why to me, I'm like, digging underneath the surface, getting deeper into, what caused this particular function in your body to change, what caused the symptom to arise. Let's dig into that. And most importantly, do it, but under the guidance and support and help of a trained professional that can actually get you results. That to me, I think is honestly the biggest difference maker. And I genuinely believe that, that's part of the reason why we can help so many people, most importantly, actually heal their body for good.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the next biggest question I get is people will say, well, if I get these tests done, what do I do with the results? Or mm-hmm. I've already gotten this test done. Now what do I do with it? I'm like, well, now what you do is you need to work with a professional who knows how to read and interpret the tests and can actually guide you through exactly what to do and keep making those adjustments to your plan. That's what you need to do. Do not try and DIY your functional lab testing because the value in the labs is knowing what to do with the results, knowing how to interpret the results, and knowing how to continue to adjust based on how your body responds over time.
Yeah, I mean, that would literally be like you being like, oh, my brakes don't work. Let me just add a little bit of of duct tape on those things, or my tire just went flat. Let me add a little bit of glue on it. Like, that's not going to work. You're going to end up getting yourself in an accident. So it's the same concept here.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope this I hope this episode was helpful for you guys. If it was, do me a favor, share this on your social media, share it on your Instagram story, send it to a friend, get the word out there. Let's make these tests more mainstream. Let's make it more part of our conversations around health, and so that we can help more people get to the root cause of their issues and start to feel better.
Yeah. Another huge favor that I want to ask, and we don't ever really ask of anything from this podcast, if you guys really find a lot of value, a lot of help, a lot of support from these episodes, please, please, please do Vanessa and I a favor. Go into Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to the podcast, and please give us a rating. Obviously, a 5-star rating would be fantastic. But if anything, just give us your genuine opinion. If there's anything that you guys want to see, hear, or learn more about, let us know. But that's really another way of helping us get to more people, get to an opportunity where we can continue to provide all of this information to people. So again, it'll take 10, 15 seconds of your time. If you don't mind, please, please, please give us a review, leave us a rating, and let us know what else we can do to help and support.
Yep. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be back
everybody.
next week.